Let's talk about it. Let's quiet the brain's chatter to reflect on what matters. Mental health is everything in a world full of actors. That's why you gotta stay woke. If you form toxic bonds, they gotta be broke. Whether it's enemies, friends, or family folk. Wellness is the wealth. Love yourself and show it care. And make sure anybody else do the same and keep it there. Keep the toxic on the low. Use your throat chakra mode. Surround you with the best support to keep your head up facing north. While departing from the need to be understood, right and liked, and embracing the sensation of just experiencing life. Loving and respecting, honoring, not neglecting the parts of ourselves that process what we stressing. The generational trauma, the being struck by the drama, the being the person of color in a hot pursuit in the summer. It's enough to drive you crazy, have you bouncing off the wall. Shout out to SG Mental Health Counseling for answering the call. Now let's talk about it.
Yo, what's good, people? This your boy Christian Brown coming from SG Mental Health and representing the best HBCU in the world, which is FAMU, of course.
Hello, everybody. This is your man, Dan Richardson, coming at you from the heights of Seven Hills, Florida A&M University, by way of Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio. And I'm letting you know I am a registered clinical social work intern for the state of Florida. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. Before we start, follow us at SG Mental Health CO, Facebook, YouTube. You can find us everywhere. So today's topic is toxic relationships, family members, any relationship. So family, friends, boyfriend, girlfriend, anything y'all desire. So before we start, we do have the special guest, amazing Dr. South. And I'm gonna allow her to introduce herself later on. Do you have anything else to say there?
No, let's get right into it. Let's talk about it.
Hey, this is gonna be interesting.
Let's do it.
Hey, can you hear us?
Hey, I can hear y'all.
Hey.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
sure
ma'am.
can.
Hey, fellas.
Hey, how you doing today? Let's talk
good.
about it.
How are y'all?
We doing wonderful.
Good.
We doing great. We doing great. Can you give us a simple introduction about yourself and what you do?
So, simple introduction. I am Dr. Carla Sapp, LPC in Georgia, LMHC in Florida, currently residing here in the state of Florida by way of coastal Georgia. I like to tell people I'm just a little geeky gal living in this world that's found myself in Florida due to work responsibilities. I've been in the field 14 years. My niche is offender counseling. I'm working with the prison incarcerated male population within the prison setting. However, I do focus on generalized mental health, addictions, trauma, as well as advocacy and public policy outside of the prison system. So super excited to be here with you fellas tonight as we talk about it.
Amazing. Once again, I just want to thank you for being here. And today's topic is toxic relationship between family, friends, and just general broad relationships.
Right.
So before we get into the questions, all the viewers out there, if you're up under 17, I do advise y'all to get permission from a parent or have somebody older than 18 to sit down with you because it's about to get tense in here. I'm not gonna lie. Might have to turn the AC on. So as I posted this on social media, Dr. Sapp, I have a lot of questions to ask you.
It's a lot.
Okay. And to start this off, the first one, we had somebody just very astonished. This astonished me, by the way. I was like, wow, I really connect with everybody that's just in the DMs and stuff. Somebody said I have someone close to me who is very loud and arrogant when they do things that they should have been doing, but now they want praise to do it. How do you humble a grown man?
So, first of all, I think that it's awesome that you have been able to interact with your viewers and be able to get the questions coming in from them to the point where it's astonishing you, right? Because I think that's how you are able to keep this conversation going and being able to touch on topics that are so relevant and necessary, especially in our communities. And so talking about toxic family members, friends, relationships, and just even with that question, you know, when I hear that question, the first thing I think about is that whole sentimentality piece, right? And so somebody's probably like, what the world is sentimentality? And so it's kind of doing some things, not necessarily doing it because it's the right thing for me to do, but doing it because there's a reason behind it. There's some ulterior motive. I'm wanting some type of praise. I'm trying to look good. I'm trying to make myself be better than what I am. And this is the thing. a grown person is going to be a grown person.
Right.
And we can't change a grown person. I can't make a grown man or a grown woman become humble, because that's something that they have to do. So then my question kind of becomes, being able to look at their actions, understanding that their actions are not a representation, or have anything necessarily to do with me, and has everything to do with them. And when I say it has everything to do with them, there's some internal stuff more than likely going on, and they're projecting that onto us when they're trying to make it out to be, well, I've done this for you, or I've done that for you. Give me my kudos because you saw I did this, this, and this. So there's that validation that they're seeking, which means that there's probably some void in their life that they haven't had that validation. And so these are those ways in which they try to grab it, and don't realize even that it's toxic, because it's probably a pattern of behavior that's persisted throughout their lives. And so being able to recognize that, being able to understand that while I can't change them, I can change how I view them, right? Because ultimately it comes down to what I can control. I can't control a grown man or a grown woman, but I can control my thoughts, my feelings, and my responses behaviorally to their actions. Look, let's just be real. I'm not going to always agree with everything that everybody does. I'm not
Right.
going to always like what everybody does, right? And that's across the board. That's how we're going to be. But that doesn't mean just because somebody is wanting their flowers and expecting me to give them, or expecting you to give them your flowers, that you have to give them their flowers. Exactly. Especially when it comes down to, if they're doing what they're supposed to do, I don't need to give you kudos for doing what you're supposed to do. That's where you kind of, be able to separate yourself, being able to distance yourself, being able to understand that at the end of the day, they got to do their own work. As long as you're doing your work and you can see what's going on, then you have nothing to worry about.
Right. That's good. That's good. Okay. Well, we have another question. Let's start off with a statement. So I have a family member of a family who is used to attention being all about them, even when it's not their birthday, and they kind of grown into this. How can I deal with them if I don't like their ways?
How can you deal with them? If we want my, non-clinical opinion, my non-clinical opinion is don't deal with them. Like, let's just call it what it is. Like, again,
Right.
goes back to, and I think it's so important to be able to talk about that aspect of control, because a lot of times we feel as individuals that because it's our family member, because it's my brother or my sister or my cousin that I was raised with, or my aunt or my uncle or my mom, my dad, we feel obligated to have to deal with their baggage. We feel obligated to have to deal with the verbal abuse or the projection of these negative behaviors toward us because they're family, and I can't. And some of that has to do with the fact that a lot of our obligations sometimes comes out of necessity, and it comes out of us not having done our own work. And so when we haven't even done our own work to even recognize that, look, this is toxic. This is hurting me, and I'm, at the end of the day, I'm abandoning who I am in order to appease someone else. We find ourselves wrapped up in this cycle, and we allow this behavior to happen. So at the end of the day, we're perpetuating behaviors onto us and projecting them onto us that we shouldn't do. So I think the biggest thing is, one, knowing that you're not obligated to have to deal with anybody's toxicity. You ain't obligated to deal with anybody's baggage. You have to get to a place where you demand respect, right? How do you demand respect? Respecting yourself first, being able to set boundaries, being able to say, you know what, no, I'm not going to tolerate that behavior. And if that's the behavior that you're wanting to have, if that's how you're wanting to treat me, then you know what? I can remove myself from the situation, and you don't have to treat me that way. Yeah, it may hurt, especially when, it's family members, but listen, we've got to start giving ourselves grace.
Right.
And we've got to be able to understand that we don't have to tolerate certain things and behaviors from people just out of obligation or out of fear that, they're going to reject me, or they're going to abandon me, or I'm going to become the black sheep of the family. Sometimes it's good to be the black sheep of the family. I'm going to just be honest with you. Sometimes it's like, you know what, I can do me and be just as happy-go-lucky. And I think about something that my offenders say sometimes to me, and it's like, just because blood makes you family doesn't mean that it actually means that you're supportive and I need to be around you. It's just a term. It just connects us.
Right.
At the end of the day, your family, your support system isn't always gonna be your family, and you'll find that sometimes. But being able to understand that it's okay to love your family from afar, but it's also just as well for you to distance yourself and take care of you. You got to be healthy first.
Okay, great. But just to add on to that, and I think we may have a question later on dealing with on a child's perspective. You know, being a youth in that same type of scenario, you know, what can a child do when they can't get away from,
Mhm.
you know, their parents or either that family member?
And I think that's so important because, I can remember growing up, right? And I love my parents. My parents are awesome. And I'll tell anybody that. But I was raised old school, right? Do as I say.
Right.
Don't you? Bottom line, if I say do it as the adult, you gonna do it. I don't care if you like it or not. And it worked for my generation.
Hmm.
But as parents, and I want to speak to the parents first in this, and then I'm going to speak to the children. As parents, we have to understand the generation that we're raising.
Mm.
This generation isn't the generation of the 80s. This ain't your Gen X's and the late 70s, early 80s. This isn't your millennials. This isn't this isn't your baby boomers. And yes, while I love having been reared old school, having an old school grandmama, born
Hmm.
in the 20s, having parents who were born in the early 50s to late 50s, and I enjoy because it helped me become who I am. I can't
Hmm.
parent my children that same way because my kids are early 2000 babies, and those babies are totally different babies. And the babies now, I got grandbabies in this new generation, and they are just as different. And so
Mhm.
we have to be able to take into consideration that what may have worked for us as children when our parents were parenting us, while we can utilize some of those methods, we also have to be able to be more present. We have to be able to hear our children. We have to be able to understand that they are dealing with unique circumstances that we didn't necessarily deal with as kids. Like we weren't worried about school shootings at school. We wasn't
Right.
worried about trauma, right? Like trauma wasn't this word, but let's just be real. Kids today are so much more traumatized directly and indirectly
Mhm.
because if they're not experiencing it firsthand, they're seeing it, whether it's in TV or on social media, or they're hearing about it. And there's so many levels to trauma that we as parents have to understand. Parenting today is not how parenting was yesterday.
Right.
And we have to be able to not feel like we have to always be disciplinarians. And just because I sit down and allow my children to have a conversation and be able to talk to me about their issues, don't make me a bad parent. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to be my child's friend. It just means that I'm being a responsive parent who understands that at the end of the day, this is a two-way street, and I can't expect my children to listen and respect me when I'm not willing to listen and hear my children and be able to provide them what they're needing too, which is that nurturing, that love, that support, a safe and brave space for them to be able to open up and share what's going on with them. Now, with that being said, for the children, and I don't want parents to think that, oh, okay, well, now she's trying to tell our kids not to listen to us. Because listen, I wish my kids would. It'd be a bad day for them, right? And they will tell you that, like, my mama ain't right sometimes. However, this is what I will say to kids. It's called respect.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, are you going to always like what your parents say? No, you're not. Are you going to always like the rules that your parents give you? No, you're not.
Hmm.
However, being able to take that step back, being able to look at the bigger picture, being able to be assertive in your communication. And when I say assertive in your communication, being able to express yourself in a healthy way. So if something is being done that is hurting you, that's harming you in some way, if you don't feel safe having that conversation with the adult who may be harming you or you feel hurting you, having an adult that you can have that conversation with,
Hmm.
whether it's a teacher or a mentor or your counselor, or it may even be, a family friend or an older sibling, having those outlets. And as parents, we have to be able to ensure, kind of going back to that village mentality, that we're providing our kids with those outlets and not
Right.
expecting that it should only be us, right?
Mhm.
But having that outlet, being able to understand that yes, there are certain things that you should not expect for a parent to do to you. Period. Whether it's a parent or an adult, there are just certain things that should not be done. If you feel that it's wrong, have a conversation about it. But don't go and make accusations, because this is what you'll hear sometimes is, these accusations start flying all over the place. Well, and it's like, well, wait a minute, did that really happen? Um, but understanding that you still have to respect the adults, right? You may not always agree with them, you may not always like it, but it all comes down to respect, and how you handle that situation is so important.
Right. That's
Okay.
good. Good.
I like that. So before we continue, I see a lot of people asking questions from Instagram. Go to the story and join us. We're going live from Facebook. The information is on there. Go live on Facebook. So, Dr. Saab, the next question is, should I address the way I feel to my parents when I know they would just yell at me for expressing myself?
And that can be hard to, I don't want to say no, you shouldn't, but at the same time, it, what I will say is this: knowing how your parents are going to respond, I would say first and foremost, being able to kind of look at and kind of practice what it is you're going to say, right? Having someone that you can kind of check it out with, whether it's another friend or an adult that you trust, like, look, I'm really wanting to talk to my parents. Even seeing if there is another adult in your family, maybe an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent or an older cousin, someone that you may be close with, that you can kind of have with you in the conversation. I definitely would like to encourage, when these conversations are happening, for the parents as well as for the children, being able to utilize I statements. And the reason I say utilize I statements is because then you're owning what you're feeling. So as a child, if I'm feeling like, mom and dad, I feel that when I try to talk to you, you don't listen to me, or I feel that I am not heard by you, and I feel that you're going to scream at me, with being able to own that instead of projecting it, well, you're doing this or you're doing that, because it comes across totally different.
Mhm.
And I'm really big on language, and language has such a power to it, right? And so I think, one, before having this conversation, knowing what you're going to say, and being able to have a justification for why you're saying it, practice it with someone that you feel comfortable with, kind of getting their feedback regarding your thoughts, your feelings, and how your parents may respond. Looking at what are some potential alternatives or some suggestions you may have, and being able to work through that prior to having that conversation. I definitely wouldn't say just jump into it, right? Because that could probably be way worse than it would be better. But going through those steps, I think is so important, because I
Mhm.
think the conversation should be had. I just think that there's a way to have the conversation, and it's not being ill prepared. It's not kind of trying to come off as I'm being, I'm stepping out of the child role and trying
Mhm.
to, tell my parents what to do or anything. No, you're wanting to have a discussion. For the parents, it's important that you listen, being able to encourage your child with having that conversation, instead of being like, how dare you talk to me, or how dare you want to have a conversation with me, being able to give them that space to feel brave, and being able to let them know that they're, one, being heard, being able to respond back by kind of reflecting what they've said to you,
Mhm.
being able to share your sentiments just as well is just as important, and then being able to work to some level of a common agreement between both the parents and the child. And so everybody's working together. So it's a collaborative effort, most definitely. But everybody has to be willing to work together in order to get to that place.
Right. I think that's very important, working together, because one of the challenges that we have, especially in the African American community, is the stigma dealing with mental health. If we can just, take our times, take a chill pill and just listen and learn from each other. Then, we can get some things done and be able to help the younger generation out.
Exactly.
Okay. So the next question says how. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, Dan, you hit on a really good point right there. If we
Hmm.
can just listen to one another, and a lot of times as adults, we have this idea that it's not my job to listen to a child. The child's job is to listen to me. That's probably been one of the biggest detriments in the Black community.
Hmm.
Is that particular belief system, and the reason why is because what it does is it silences the children. It takes
Hmm.
away their voice, and yet when they become older, or they start to act out, and you start to see these behaviors, whether it's in school or in the community, and you're like, no, not my child. And I taught my child better, but what role did you play in that by not hearing your child, and so, I always tell people communication is not about talking at or talking to. Communication is a two-way street. I've got to be able to hear you. I've got to be able to listen, and not listen to respond, but listen to actually understand what you're saying. And that goes both ways. The children have to be able to listen at the parents to understand the parents, but the parents have to be just as willing to listen to the children and understand where the children are coming from too.
Hmm. That's good. Good. Okay. All right. The next question is how to deal with insecure people.
Oh, insecure people. So I'm going to go back to kind of what I said earlier when we first started.
Hmm.
And it goes back to the first, my major point. I can't, you can't, we can't change anybody. Their insecurity is their insecurity. Now, I can talk with them, and I can share with them, I can
Hmm.
communicate with them how their behaviors are impacting me, what I'm noticing, what you're noticing, what we're noticing about their behaviors. However, their insecurities are going to be their insecurities, and so they're at a place where they're wanting to begin to even recognize and accept. And so if we talk about kind of like the stages of change, so we want somebody to change, right?
Hmm.
We're telling them, all these things are going on. But I always tell people, when they're in that denial stage, which is that pre-contemplation stage, 9 times out of 10, they don't even know that they're telling themselves a lie, right? Because they
Right.
don't think they have an issue. They're like, I don't got no issue. I'm not insecure. And I always tell people that denial is not just a river in Egypt. Denial actually stands for don't even know it's a lie. um, and that's part of that issue right there, right? And so we can do our best to try to enlighten them, give them some insight, kind of be able to highlight their behaviors and how it comes across as being insecure. But understanding that it's not up to us to change somebody. And I think we get so consumed a lot of times as
Hmm.
individuals, not just as individuals in the helping profession, social service profession, but just as a community. We're so consumed with, I've got to help everybody, I got to change everybody. And what we do is we run ourselves ragged because we see the issue, we know the issue, we want the issue to change, and so we stay there and we allow this to continue to happen, and we ultimately do more harm to ourselves. We burn ourselves out trying to make somebody else change. And I think it's so important to just reiterate, we can't change anybody. We
Hmm.
can't, I can't, you can't, we can't make anybody make a change. We can only put, kind of like the whole idea of cooking supper, I can put the food on the table. If you're going to eat it, you're going to eat it. If you're not, that's on you, right? Um,
Exactly.
and so I use that acronym sometimes, but like, let's eat, educate ourselves, apply what I'm learning, transform my mind and my body and my soul. Some people just ain't ready to eat. And if they're not ready to eat,
Mm.
what can you do?
Right.
You can't make them eat, but if you hungry enough, you're going to eat that food. So at the end
Mm.
of the day, if it's to a point where it's hindering you from doing what you need to do, if it is stressing you out, if it's causing relationship dynamic problems for you, you're starting to see the unhealthiness, and that's when you need to distance yourself because you're putting in way too much work for them not to be putting in anything. So you're invested in something that they're not even invested in, which isn't good. So you've got to be able to have some level of insight for yourself, some level of balance for yourself, and that boundary. Having boundaries is so important just as well.
Okay, that's good.
We have a lot of viewer who's asking, how can you help the older generation adjust to new tactics and also judging people for themselves and not what you hear about them?
I love my older my more seasoned generations. I love them, right? But let's just be real, the older generations just set in their ways, right?
Yeah.
And because the older generation is just set in their ways, this new age stuff, they just like, no, we ain't trying to hear this. So what you're saying is I'm supposed to not say nothing? I'm supposed to just let this child talk to me? Oh no, I'm gonna just get my belt, wear them out, call it a day, right? That's that old generation. I think the biggest thing is for those of us who the shift is going to start with the Gen X, which is really interesting because the Gen X, when you think about the Generation X, there's so many different not rumors, but there's so many kind of misconceptions and trying to figure out when Gen X is, when does that generation stop? When does the millennials begin? Mm-hmm. Is there a crossover between Gen X's and millennials? Because there's like this little group that was born between 1980 and about 86, 87 that really don't fit millennials, but they're saying they're not Gen X's. So you have that whole deal. But I think that where it starts with that kind of generation right there, setting the example moving forward, right?
Right.
Because what happens is as each generation, and our silent generation now is our more older generation, because they're our more seasoned generation, and then we have our baby boomers. What you see is that the children who are being raised today are being raised by your Gen Xers and your millennials, right? Mm-hmm. And so your baby boomers and your silent generations, those are your grandparents and your great grandparents. And some of your millennials and your Gen Xers are grandparents. I'm one of those Gen Xers that's a grandparent. And so while we can continue to carry on their legacy, it's also about being able to heal ourselves so that we can then create new legacies. We can add to that legacy, right? And so in knowing how times are, being able to understand the ways of the world, how do we then tend to kind of handle these issues with our children and with our grandchildren? Taking into consideration how we were raised, but then kind of taking this kind of new kind of generation kind of idea, and being able to kind of integrate that into it. Not saying that, again, like I said, not saying that children shouldn't, listen at their parents, but also understanding that as a parent and as a grandparent, I should also be hearing my children too and my grandchildren, and being able to be more responsive and not kind of just laying down the law and calling it a day. Because knowing that tactic tends to not work, or it tends to provoke more of a trauma response out of them because there's so much trauma that's just involved. And so I think that's so important at this point. Is I don't think we can change the older generation, because the older generation is just going to be, you love them, that they're going to be who they are. But I think we can start to create new legacies when it comes to discipline, when it comes to parenting, when it comes to grandparenting, that continues to move forward. In order for our generations currently and our generations to come to be healed, we've got to do our own work too. And right. So because we've got to do our own work, I think that's just as important in trying to make this change. Is we're doing our work to heal ourselves, because if I'm healing me, then guess what? My children are going to become a lot more healthier, because they're going to see me in a more healthier perspective. I'm going to be responding to them healthier. They're going to respond to their children in a more healthier manner as well, because they're going to model what it is that they've seen that I've done, and what they've kind of been around. And so those are those things that I think we have to be able to take responsibility for individually as well as collectively. Now, I will say this, I do think we need to go back to the village mentality. I think that we've gotten so far away from that village mentality, and it's kind of, this is my child, you don't tell my child what to do. But the reality of it is we are a community, and in order for us to truly be whole, it takes a entire collective effort. And I think that's part of what's missing right now. And part of that toxicity is because we've become more of an individualistic society where everybody is focused on themselves,
Right.
and how do I get to the next place, instead of how do I take everybody to the next place with me? How do all of us go to the next place and we're all healthy? And so that's very important, I think, too, is just being able to look at some of those, those ideals and beliefs that do come from the older generation, and being able to go back and incorporate in them as well into practice today.
That's good. Good. So you want to? All right. Well, we got another question here. Every time I want to leave my significant other, they threaten to hurt themselves and guilt trip me back talking to them. So what should they do?
Okay. First and foremost, anytime you feel that you're being guilt into staying in a relationship, anytime that you feel that someone is using some type of tactic to control the decisions that you're making, I want you to hear me, and hear me loud and clear. That is unhealthy. It is not just unhealthy, it's completely toxic. And to some degree, there's probably some level of narcissism there. And there's probably some mental health stuff going on as well. And chances are, 9 times out of 10, this isn't the first relationship that you've been in where that behavior has persisted. If and I don't know who asked the question, so I'm not judging. I'm just kind of globally saying 9 times out of 10, when we find ourselves in these relationships, this has been a pattern of behavior, whether it's in relationships with significant others, and or it's been relationship with family members or friends throughout our lives. And it's a behavior that we've kind of attracted and that we've taken on. One, you deserve to be safe. You deserve to feel safe. If you are asking that question, then that tells me that, one, you're not safe and you don't feel safe. And that you're staying out of obligation, but not only out of obligation, out of fear. And anyone who's in a relationship out of fear, I encourage you wholeheartedly, reach out to someone that you feel safe with, be able to share what is going on, and be able to create you a safe exit plan. A safe exit plan is so important. Whether it is moving with someone and not being able to share your location, things of that nature. If it means going to local law enforcement for protection or shelter, you deserve to be safe. You cannot save everyone. And I wouldn't encourage you to stay in that relationship. So being able to reach out to the resources that may be available within your social networks, but also just within your community, identifying what those may be, and utilizing those resources. Definitely would encourage you to connect with a counselor, and be able to work through some of the issues that you have, because not only is there some external stuff happening with the other individual projecting some of their toxicity and their baggage emotionally, possibly physically and verbally onto you, but also there's some internal things that you need to work on as well. And I think that that's so important, because I can only imagine that in this relationship, there's probably been a lot of abuse, whether it be emotionally or verbally, and maybe even physically, but it has impacted how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your ideal, your concept of who you are, how you feel about yourself. And so that's just as important, because I'm hearing in that question that there's a lack of confidence. I'm hearing in that question that there is a lack of resolve, and that there is some level of fear, but there's that uncertainty as well. And so I think being able to connect with a counselor within the community is so important. And I just want to highlight too that, while I am a licensed professional, this is in no way me providing therapy right now. This is just me globally, generally answering questions, but
Right,
reaching
right.
out to a licensed a licensed professional, or someone who is a registered mental health professional working as an intern at a credible counseling agency such as SG Mental Health, is very important, because there are people who can provide you with the resources that you're needing, even if you don't know where they are, but you have to be able to take that step and reach out first.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay. Someone had asked, how can I set healthy boundaries when I have no control over where I stay since I'm a minor?
How do you set healthy boundaries as a minor? That's a good question for a minor. Woo.
Exactly.
That was something serious right there as a minor. So how do you set boundaries, healthy boundaries? So I think the first question is, being able to identify what are healthy boundaries, right? Um, Being able to know what your boundaries look like. So yes, you have no control because you are a minor. So you're probably in your parents' house, or you're in a family member's house, or whomever house you're having to live in, and so they have rules, right? But how do you establish boundaries for your space? How do you how are you able to communicate those boundaries? Being able to identify what you would like your boundaries to look like, and being able to communicate those in a way that's respectful, that's assertive. That's not kind of, okay, well, this is what I want, or this is how I want it to happen, or jerk, this is what we're going to do. But having that kind of communication. Also, how you carry yourself, how you respect yourself is so important. And so, if you're wanting the adults in the home that you're residing in to respect you, are you respecting yourself? Are you keeping your room, like, thinking about those things? Are you keeping your room clean? If you got chores, are you doing your chores, or are they having to tell you to do your chores, right? And so those are kind of other means to be able to kind of establish those boundaries, by you holding up the end of whatever deal, rules, things of that nature that you have. So if there's expectations of you, and you're adhering to those expectations, 9 times out of 10, those boundaries are going to kind of come, because what you're going to find is that it's going to be more naturalistic and more instinctual. And so if somebody's having to constantly tell you, hey, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that, then you're going to have an issue. But if you are actually being respectful, doing what you say you're going to do, living up to the rules and the expectations that your parents or the adults who you're residing with have of you, chances are you're not going to have as many issues, right? Because they're going to be like, okay, you know what, little Johnny or little Susie, just making up names here, is responsible, and because they're responsible, I don't have to tell them what to do, and so that's so important, because what I'm getting from that is 9 times out of 10, there's some rules and some laws being laid down, and probably because some things you're not always doing everything that you're supposed to do in your teenage or your child, and that's to be expected. But how do you maintain your responsibilities, and how you respect others, helps you to set those boundaries for yourself.
Okay, great. All right, here's another one. As a child, another child question. As a
Okay.
child, what is the easiest way to tell my family they are toxic and I don't want to live with them anymore?
Oh. Okay. Well. So again, I just want to put the disclaimer out that this is a no-way therapy.
Right. Right.
And so, first and foremost, I think if a child is feeling that the family is toxic, um, I'm definitely going to encourage the whole unit to take a look at themselves. And I say that because that's powerful coming from a child, whether this child is, preteen or adolescent. That's powerful for a child to be able to say that. So what that says is that there's something in the system that is not working. There's some dysfunction there. And yeah, we don't want to hear that sometimes, but that's the reality. And so definitely would encourage the family, first and foremost, to kind of look at the system and try to figure out, okay, what's going on with our family system that our child feels that we're toxic and they don't want to be here with us. Again, support system is so important. My hope is that there is some family member that they can reach out to, that they feel would be supportive of them to have that conversation with, or some adult in their life that they can speak with. In school, if there are, and this is the thing. Again, I know some parents, some adults might be like, how dare she say this? But I'm just going to be real. If as a child you're feeling threatened, if as a child, just like, and I would say this to any adult, if as a child you feel threatened, if you feel that you are being neglected, or you feel that you are being abused, there are individuals that you can share that with, that can help you, that can provide you resources. There's a way to go about it. So ensuring that you're not making false accusations. It's not that you're just upset with your family because they gave you some rules and you don't like the rules because they said you need to be home at 9 and all your friends have to be home at 11. So now you're upset, and so they're toxic. So, like, let's just be real, because that happens. And so making sure that, your accusations are legitimate, and can be verified. But if that's the case, please reach out, talk to someone, whether it's a teacher at school, whether it's another an adult you trust, if it's a friend's parent that you trust. Reach out and have a conversation with someone who can help you. Because just like no adult should stay in a relationship or and where they're being harmed, whether it is physically, verbally, abusively, emotionally, no child should have to live in such an environment either. And they should have an outlet. They should understand that there are outlets and resources for them to utilize. And so, if you're not feeling safe with being able to have that conversation with your family, have that conversation with someone. If you feel that you need to, reach out to a counseling agency, of course, you have to do that with your parents. But being able to talk to another responsible adult who you feel that you can trust is going to be so important. If you have a friend that you can trust and maybe they can trust their parents, reaching out to that friend and having that friend kind of connect you with their parents. But that's the key to this. Is kind of knowing your resources and knowing who you need to reach out to and feeling comfortable with doing that. Because I think a lot of times kids feel like, well, I have to just deal with it. I have to put up with it. But children should not have to deal and put up with anything that is harmful to them, and to their mental health. Because again, I work in a prison system, and I see the lasting impacts of children, of adults who, I mean, I'd say adults because they're still children, because we're working through childhood trauma like there is no tomorrow. But a lot of it stems from just living in homes that were dysfunctional and toxic, and because they didn't have an outlet, they didn't feel like they had a safe or brave space where they could go and talk to somebody. They just dealt with it, and it did more harm than good, because, oh well, they weren't going to believe me anyway because it's my parents. I'm just going to be real. There are some parents out there who can be toxic. There are some families out there that are very dysfunctional, and some children are in very dire need. As adults, if this is happening, we should not be judging. We should be trying to, if we're seeing it, we should be extending a helping hand too. Like, look, I see that there's a struggle going on. How can I help you? Here are some resources, getting them connected with counselors, getting them connected with community resources, parenting, things of that nature, to help them be able to gain the skills. And a lot of times some of this is because they weren't taught themselves. They never learned it, or they're perpetuating what they did see and what they did learn. And so
Right.
then you have this dysfunction that continually takes place, like a repeated cycle. And so just putting that out there, please reach out to someone that you feel safe with, being able to have that conversation, and knowing that you're supported in that.
Okay. So, how do you break the family members that don't tell the other family members when they are in the wrong, and stop ignoring the fact that it's an issue?
So that one is interesting, because I think it happens. I would assume it probably happens in just about every family, right? Like, we just kind of want to go around the issue, act like the issue really isn't there. Okay, we don't talk about it. Kind of like that whole idea with church, or what happens in the house stays in the house, and we don't talk about our issues. We go to God. We pray about it, call it a day. God's gonna fix it, and it's like, okay, I always tell people the Bible says faith without works is dead. And so, if faith without works is dead, then that means we got to do something. I can't expect for it to just magically, because God is, all being. It's just going to magically be fixed because God is the bomb. And I do believe he's the bomb diggity, right? But also know that he requires me to do some work too if I'm expecting for it to really, truly be fixed, right? And so this is the thing. I say that to say this, as a culture, as the African American culture, it's been so ingrained in us through generations to not deal with stuff, to just kind of
Right.
let it go and let it work itself out. And when it blows up in our face, then we're all sitting there looking crazy. We got to stop that.
Exactly.
Like, I'm just going to be straightforward, as blunt as I can be. We've got to stop that, right? We've got to stop acting like these things are not happening in our families. We've got to stop perpetuating these stigmas, and we've got to stop oppressing our own selves. We deal with so much as a culture. We're always up in arms about everyone else oppressing us, everybody else trying to hold us down. But we are our biggest oppressors because we have internalized this ideology. And because we've internalized this ideology about ourselves and our culture, we do ourselves more harm. And guess what? Because we're doing it to ourselves, others feel that it's just as perfectly fine for them to do it to us because we're doing it to ourselves. So why not for us to continue it on, right? We got to stop that. As a culture, as a race, as an ethnicity. When there's issues happening in the family, we got to come together and we got to talk about them issues. If we know that, Johnny is struggling with alcohol use, or he's using substances like there's no tomorrow, we can't sit there and make jokes about it. And, oh, he just an addict. He ain't never gonna stop. Because guess what? He not gonna stop. He ain't gonna stop because we ain't trying to help him. We too busy tearing him down. And that just adds on to probably the shame, the fear, all the uncomfortable and negative emotions that he's already feeling in the thoughts, because we're attaching all these negative labels. And guess what? He's gonna become it because it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for him. He ain't worth anything. He don't think we think he worth anything. He don't think he worth anything. So you know what? I might as well just do what I do and call it a day. But when we're addressing these issues head on, and not just addressing them, coming together as a family, but going to counseling. I just had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they were like, in our culture, people don't think that, we should go to counseling because what happens in our house stays in the house. I said, and that's why we're in the situation we're in today, because what happened in the house stayed in the house. No, we have, and we're having more and more clinicians come into this profession who look like us, and who understand what we're going. Case in point, 3 of us are right here tonight. And because of that, we've got to be able to utilize our resources, right? We've got to be able to let go of those stigmas that Big Mama had and Granddaddy had. We got to be able to let that go and understand that if we're truly going to heal, if we're truly going to work through issues, if we're truly going to be a very happy and satisfied
Mhm.
family, we got to do some work. And
Mhm.
that work is not just me going to counseling, but the family going to counseling, right? Everybody
Right.
everybody in this healing process. And counseling isn't bad. You don't have to have a mental health diagnosis. Like most people think that, oh, if I go to counseling, then I'm crazy because I got some. People don't go to counseling just because they got a mental health diagnosis. And people in mental health diagnosis, I feel like, has become one of the biggest barriers and probably one of the most negative stereotypes ever, because most times people don't have diagnoses. It's just life issues, and it all comes back to dealing with some
Mhm.
type of trauma in their life. And when we're able to kind of work through process, be able to give you some tools and help you to be able to work through those in those moments, you start to see life in a totally different perspective. So a lot of it is just about understanding what is happening to me and with me in this moment. How am I responding? Why am I responding this way? And how can I respond totally different? But we got to be willing to do it. We got to let our guard down. We got to understand that, this is, if we're expecting to move forward, and we're expecting not to just move forward individually, but collectively as a culture, as a race, as an ethnicity, if we're going to move
Mhm.
forward, then we got a lot of work we got to do, and we got to stop trying to hide stuff, or try to act like it's not happening and avoid it, because the more we avoid it, the bigger it becomes, and when it blows up in our face, then we all sitting there looking crazy. No, we should have dealt
Exactly.
with it from the get-go.
Exactly.
Right. Right. Okay. We got maybe possibly about 9 more questions here, and then we got one on the live there that came
Okay.
up.
Oh, actually, the 11th right here was gonna be the last one for her, and
Okay.
somebody want us to answer the rest. They want to go
Okay.
first.
Got you. All
Okay.
right. So here we go. It says, what triggers people to be attracted to toxicity and red flags?
9 times out of 10, they have their own level of toxicity and red flags that they haven't dealt with. So it's more internal than anything. It's what they're used to. It has a lot to do with their internal struggles. It has a lot to do with trauma.
Mhm.
And a lot of times it's more of a trauma response than anything. When we become comfortable, when that's become a norm in our lives, we tend to seek out what it is we're comfortable with. Um, Individuals who have lived in chaos tend to seek out chaos and don't even, a lot of times it's more unconscious, and don't even realize that that's what's happening. And so um, when you've lived in an environment plays such a huge role in that. And so you think growing up, you've lived in an environment growing up where there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of toxicity. You tend to gravitate towards that because that's what becomes norm for you. So because it's what's norm for you, anything outside of that just completely feels uncomfortable. Whereas a norm for
Mhm.
somebody else may be like, okay, that's not right. People shouldn't be acting like that. For some people, that's become, and I always tell people, normalcy is relative to the person, the experiences that they've had throughout their lives, the environment in which they've resided in, and how they've learned to manage and cope with that. And so being able to take that into consideration when working, and not just working with individuals, when being around individuals, because sometimes we're like, how can she stay in, how can he stay in this relationship, how can she stay in this relationship? And it's not
Mhm.
about how can she, it's what has she gone through, or what has he gone through that makes him feel comfortable in that situation and makes him uncomfortable in a situation that's not like that. So being able to understand those dynamics give a totally different perspective. So it's all about being able to look at it from a different way versus, I can't believe, they're just staying in this relationship and just letting this happen. What happened to them? What have they experienced that makes that normal? What
Mhm.
makes that comfortable for them? And what can we do to help them as individuals see that there is total something different? A lot of it is comes back down to doing their own work, their own internal work, their own childhood work, being able to work through some unresolved trauma that they've had, being able to work through, issues and maladaptive coping skills that they've learned as a means to escape or a means to kind of manage and deal, and then helping them to build up to this place where they're comfortable enough to feel that, I don't have to be in this situation anymore. But it's a process. And I always tell people everything is a process. It don't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just
Right.
expect for them to wake up tomorrow and be like, yep, I'm done. No. Especially when you're talking years upon years of trauma and experiences and things of that nature, stressors that they've had. So I think it's being able to change our perspective and how we look at the situation just as well. And being able to not just blame them for staying there, but kind of taking into consideration what they've experienced through life that may make that comfortable for them to stay.
Okay, I like that. Well, Dr. Sapp, I want to give a special thanks just simply for you taking the time out your day to sit down and have this conversation with us. It really means a lot.
Y'all are welcome. Y'all are welcome. I'm super excited for what's to come with you all. This is awesome, and I want y'all to keep doing the work because we need to see more Black men, especially Black men who are counselors and clinicians in this field, stepping up to the plate and having these dialogues, not just with other Black men, but just with our community, because it actually is refreshing. And it's not just refreshing, it brings some sense of normalcy and let people know it's okay to be vulnerable and to have these conversations. So kudos to both you, Christian, and you, Dan. I think that it's so amazing. Keep up the good work. I'm proud of y'all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sapp.
Thank you.
All
Have
right.
a great day.
Y'all
Okay,
too. Thanks.
okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
What's up, people? Yo, Dan, I forgot to mention this, but I did have a special request. They love when we talk. They love the special guests, but they love when we talk.
They love it when we talk.
You feel me? I have a lot of people on the Instagram Live, and they be asking how to get on here. And I let everybody know you got to go to Facebook and type in SG Mental Health CO. So today I'm gonna do y'all a special favor, and y'all will get all the insight and be able to see everything from my Instagram and the Facebook and YouTube. So I'm gonna set this up real quick. There we go. So Dan, somebody asked you how to build self-worth in order to believe that you deserve a healthy, loving relationship.
All right. How to build self-worth. Well, first of all, dealing with relationships, I think one of the things that you have to look at is pay attention to who you are. If whatever thing that you trying to work on in life to position yourself to be a better person, I would recommend that person work on themselves first before even getting involved in that relationship. And I think being healthy, knowing that you're healthy, will add value to the relationship going into the relationship. That whereas it can increase the value of it. And with the same token, just taking your time in it, because you don't want to go into something knowing that either you're not really ready yet or either the other person isn't ready, because then they can add that toxicity in that relationship that can cause volumes, or should I say speak volumes of that unevenness of that relationship. You're trying to figure things out. And when the couple or whatever the relationship is, if they're not being true to who they are, how could they be true to the relationship and being impactful to enhance it?
Yeah, that's powerful. And I agree, just from a younger Black man, from my perspective, I agree with everything he said. And I would say be more affirmative with who you are and what you believe. Say affirmations and truly believe everything that you're speaking. Because we see all these fairy tales growing up on Disney Channel, Nickelodeon, movies and shows. And then when reality hit us, that's when we start to feel more bitter towards situations, relationships, or whatever we start to invest in. So I'm a big advocate for investing in yourself, your emotional well-being, spiritual, mental, and have some foundations of what you stand for. Like, I'm not going to deal with X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to deal with somebody that's being abusive, even if I'm in love or think that I'm in love. Just set certain foundations and do not break that. Don't break it at all, no matter what you feel.
Right. Well, here's a question for you, Christian. It seems like I attract negative people. What can I do to check myself to find out if I am the one who is toxic?
Oh, that's powerful. Number one thing that you can do, you taking the big step right now just by saying that, but seek professional help. Like Dr. Sapp said, seeking professional help, it doesn't mean nothing is too far off from you or anything. Like, just everybody gets professional help. It's just continue investing in yourself, continue. And from the outside perspective, that professional can sit down with you. And when you do sit down with them, just be real, just be open. It's confidential. Everything that y'all speaking about is between you and the other person, and that's it. So if I'm coming in, I'm like, why do I always feel like I need to control what my girl wear, or feel like I get angry when my girl say certain things to me? That professional is equipped enough to let me know what I'm dealing with, and it may come from something from my childhood, something internal, something that I watch every single day, social media, or something down that line.
Right. And just to piggyback off of that is, that moment when you are being open, you sharing your own story, and you're trying to figure things out. And basically what that professional will help you do is fine tune your story, to help that illustration look a little better.
Exactly.
So when you are, providing that information in your story, it becomes easier each time you talk about it. So it's just getting it out, just like, hey, let's talk about it.
Exactly.
We're getting it out.
Exactly. And next week we'll be going live again. Just a quick, brief appointment. Join us on our next live, July 20th, for post foster care. Special guest Monique Jackson. That's going to be something special. Y'all not going to miss that one. So another question for you, Dan. How do I move forward from a toxic relationship?
How do I move forward from a toxic relationship? Wow. Everybody moves differently in all the different relationships, but the thing is really being patient with yourself, and learning, kind of taking a break from those relationships, or that relationship that you was in, and just really doing some fine tuning and just reminiscing on things and trying to build up on them. Because, moving forward, you want to make sure that you are equipped, like I was saying earlier, about the making sure that you are healthy. There's no way the cycle will be broken if you don't stop it from the head. And that comes down to us as individuals who are, have been in a toxic relationship. If we don't, find help or find how to stop it, we're going to repeat the process over and over again. So moving forward is just really just finding out who you are, accepting the situation at hand, and being real with yourself.
Exactly. I agree. No, the number one thing I would say is practice being single. It'll be hard for a man and a woman, but practice being single. Remove that opposite sex or whoever you're attracted to away. Unless if it's genuine friendships, and that's it, because it'll kind of tend to rub off onto them. Because when you spend that quality time with that one-on-one type of vibe, you tend to start to feel like y'all in relationships if it's not a genuine friendship. So I would just say practice being single, hang out with your friends, go out and do things that you enjoy.
Right. Okay, here's another question. All right, I am a toxic person and I want to change. What shall I do first?
Make a list. Make a list of your toxic traits and be real with yourself, and share it with either a professional, a parent, or somebody older that you trust, that you could seek wise counseling from. And just be real with yourself and just mark things off slowly. You don't have to tell the whole world. Just truly practice this and be very intentional with your words, the things you do, and the things you just say and present out there in the world.
That's good. That's real good. Let's see. I got one more question for you. It seems like I attract people with drama in their life. Could this mean that I am a toxic person?
It depends. I'll say, yo. Dan, how you feel about that? You got more experience, you know?
Well, I will have to, look at the drama part of it, because as an individual, if your whole life is centered around just wanting that drama, it seems like you're attracted to that drama, then of course I would say you have to question yourself whether or not to say you're a toxic person or not. I wouldn't go that far, but just to, just to saying you are what you eat, just you are who you hang around, or at least you will become that, or a potential to become that. So if you're trying to avoid being like the people you associate with, you might just don't need to associate with those type of people, to alleviate yourself from a possibility of having an ounce of that toxicity.
Wow. We got one last question. We're going to end things off. But once again, share and follow us at SG Mental Health CO, and be ready to join us on our next live July 20th with post foster care special guest Moniece Jackson. And the last question, then, how to deal with parents or people who seem like they're always happy and nothing is ever wrong?
Well, how do you deal with people who seem like they're always happy? Well, I guess it all depends. One side of the coin, I would look at the fact that, it's that person's life. It's up to them to be that way. And I can't change the way that person is or think. On the other hand, when you're dealing with family members or someone that you know and that you've been around for a while, and you see that they're going through changes in their life and they don't want to succumb to whatever the thing that the friend have noticed, is to try to talk to someone that's close to them that they probably respect and listen to, and try to find out what's going on. And hopefully it's nothing too deep where they may need mental health counseling. But if so, hopefully they'll listen to that person that they respect. Yeah,
you're right about that. And it all depends on the person, because I see where you're going with that. Like that person that kind of used that defense mechanism and want you to talk about your problems, but when it's time for them to talk, it's like, oh, everything good. Like living in that fake world that they created to run away from their problems. But if anything, I would sit down with that person, depending on your relationship, and ask them, like, why every time I talk to you, you always seem like you're always happy and nothing is ever wrong? Maybe that person is not comfortable with sharing that information with you, or it depends on the age difference. A lot of times we're not able to sit down and have that conversation due to immaturity or due to certain comments where it's like you can tell when you can have a conversation with certain individuals, But once again, I thank everybody for tuning in and sharing. Please follow us at SG Mental Health CO. And tune in next week. It's going to be big and epic. Y'all not going to want to miss that one, man.
That's right.
Oh, man. I think that this was a good one.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I like this one too. And I hope you all enjoyed it as well.
Exactly. So until then, let's talk about it, people.
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.